So big start to the week in the GBRS performance program. We got a full body posterior day. We're going to start by getting those hips moving, challenging that rotation of those ball and socket joints, and then working on that elasticity of that lower leg, building into some power movements, being explosive, being violent, driving the hips, and then getting that strength component, building strength on that posterior side from the floor all the way up to the upper back. All right, let's get moving. DJ starting out with the Shinbox rotations. This is one of my favorite movements, kind of exploring internal rotation and external rotation of the hips. He's just kind of feeling it out. You see him kind of find some internal rotation on his own, but the big emphasis here is him just exploring that rotational capability of his hips. Not only is this an internal diagnostic to kind of see where you're at on a daily basis, but as well to kind of get those hips moving, challenging that ball and socket joint for the tissue that it is, not just restricting it in the lunge and squat patterns, which is typically seen in programming. So now building through an isometric from that rotational setup. So he's in this 90-90, the Shinbox sort of style setup. And from here, we have a tennis ball, just so we get the feedback of pressure, and he's gonna build into a contraction. So you'll see his kind of fists get kind of tight onto the ground. He's gonna start to strain that upper body for that tension, and he's gonna try to break that ball. So we're really challenging the external rotation of this lead leg, but also getting some bite from internal rotation of this rear leg. But he's really trying to break this ball, challenging his hips in this end range of position from seen here, and trying to strengthen this area. He's gonna let off the gas, reset for a second, kind of relax into this position. Now try to bias his upper body a little bit as he tilts in a little bit further. So we had that rotational movement through those Shinbox rotations, and now building strength and durable hips with this setup. So now DJ is going to build back into that contraction, really strengthening, really trying to break this ball and challenge his hips and drive that tennis ball down into the ground. Hold it, hold it, hold it. Slowly let off the gas. So we work the hips from a seated setup. Now we're going to kind of go to a standing position, get more of that closed chain element of the hips with these hip hikes. He has his foot elevated here, and from here I'm thinking about what the action of the pelvis is doing. So he's kind of letting his pelvis dip in, and then he's pushing up. But he's really thinking about reaching this heel, getting long, and then lifting it up. But he's getting that position by driving that right foot into the floor. I'm really trying to challenge my hips from that lateral perspective of driving through the plate, lifting it nice and tall, and then nice and slow down. Those small muscles around the hips to kind of keep us stable with what our pelvis is. This is a good movement to kind of isolate those movements as something we'll progress with our posterior day movements.
Dude, I like these for my lower back. I feel like I've always suffered like QL issues, lower back issues, like super tight hips. We did these things a couple years ago. It's like just that pressure, that slow eccentric movement on the way down, and then being able to pulse it. It fires muscle groups. I feel like we never hit any other way except for this. Like such a simple movement, but it's like when you do it with such concentration, such focus, it just, those 4 inches, dude, that has saved everything for my lower back. I feel like I struggled with that for so long until you added these on.
That's a great point, because the lower back is constantly seen as something we need to avoid, but a movement like this, very simple, connecting the dots with the intentional movement, really can strengthen and bolster that area so we're not running with fear for actually being productive and creating a durable system that can adapt to situations. So I love closed chain movements when it comes to connecting the foot to the hip. We have this kind of nice bandit setup here to really challenge that connection. So DJ set up with the band pulling in. I like to go right above the knee, just from a comfort standpoint. So we have this slight pull in, so you're having to actively cue our foot down to the ground to stay stacked up, connecting the foot up to this hip. From here, he's thinking about keeping as much of his weight on that left foot as possible as he moves his hip up and around through rotation, just kind of challenging that hip to hold position, really trying to keep the emphasis on this left foot that's on the ground, trying to stay as tall as possible as he moves this hip around and contours around the band, slowing it down, really trying to go up, challenge that movement, challenge that rotation, challenge the foot that's on the ground. The stability from the foot up to the hip is kind of a good bang for our buck. A lot of things going on, a good prep movement to pair with those hip hikes. Next thing, we got some extensive pogos, really working the elasticity of the lower leg and ankle. This is a really big movement when it comes to plyometrics, really setting the tone for athleticism. When we think about tactical athletes, tactical population, we always want to think of it not as an athletic position, an athletic job, but we really have to be dynamic on the field, on the battlefield. We need to be explosive. We need to have these capabilities. This is definitely something that's a trainable attribute that we can program in our programming.
I like those moves because it gives me the ability to get comfortable as soon as I touch the ground, make another decision. Am I going to turn? Am I going to spring back up? What am I going to do? I feel like a lot of times it's kind of static and then it's explosive. But as I jump off the back of a truck, I land off this, I a parachute landing, whatever. The moment my feet touch the ground, I have to make a decision. Am I going to run now? Am I going to change direction? Am I going to jump up again? What am I going to do? I feel like that it really connects me. My ankle stability, the ground, proprioception, everything. Got to make a decision as soon as I touch it. We talk about how low our feet are to the ground, everything. It's like as soon as they hit, I've got to rebound, I've got to do something, change direction. But it's an easy way just to build the confidence in doing it.
So we've talked about, does your hardware match your software? Like when you're in the moment, can your body do what you're asking it to do? And I think those extensive pogos is a great way of looking at the elasticity of the leg. Like you said, jumping off a truck. Like if you know you can do that, you're probably going to be more able and put yourself in positions where you can do that and not be compromised. Like, oh, I have to help myself down. I have to sit my gun down now. I have to sit my bag down now because I'm not comfortable doing that.
Yeah, I've decreased my load to be able to perform that same exercise. Well, that's not an option.
Yeah.
You have to be able to do it. And if you don't understand your limitations and where you can actually, get explosiveness from, you're not going to be able to get it on demand.
So next, working a kettlebell swing, we're going to do it with a single arm though. So as we're getting this posterior chain prepped, we kind of like to add some rotation on certain movements, and this single arm swing is a great way to do it. He's getting that left arm back, getting some rotation, finding that English as you see him reach back into his hips, toes down, driving his hips forward, really finishing on the front side of his body, but prepping that nervous system, being powerful with this kettlebell, adding that slight area of rotation with the single arm swing. Drive your hips. Hips back, through. Hips back, through. Hips back, through. So our primary movement, big compound movement, is a barbell RDL. We got 8 reps at an RPE of 7. Big emphasis here is going to be sliding back into that hinge, feeling that hinge being strong there, being stable, really trying to lengthen that hamstring, that posterior chain, and be strong there. We're not really worried about picking the bar up from the floor with this kind of where we're at in our programming. Really just trying to keep that tension on the hamstring and that posterior chain the whole time. Settle up. Like an overhand grip, really challenge the grip that we're setting up with. And from here, he's keeping his whole foot on the ground, really driving his toes down, creating tension from his toes up to his hips. He's sliding back, feeling the hinge. More isn't better here. You're sliding back. The second you feel that tension kick on in the hamstrings, then you're driving those hips through on the way right back up. Really keeping our shoulder blades nice and intact on the way back, sliding back, feeling that hinge, making this exercise harder than it is, loading that area, driving the hips through, meeting the bar. Beautiful. One more rep. Slide back, drive. Money. If you notice, there's always an emphasis on mobility with all of our items. Not only are we trying to get big and powerful, but we're also trying to remain with this longevity piece of being able to train as long as possible. So we've been exploring our single arm row patterns quite a bit, and I really love this hinge pattern because not only are we loading the lats with a traditional single arm row, but we get the aspect of loading this hip and this foot. So we're strengthening that area, bolstering it through a closed chain movement, really try to help out the hips, challenge them rotationally, but as well, this is going to help with our lower back because we're not running away from it. We're really trying to challenge that area to create durability for long-lasting efforts so we can train forever. This isn't about just having a great workout one day, but being able to train 52 weeks out of a year.
I like that single leg better than I do traditional both legs on the ground. I feel like it connects all the dots. If I don't lock everything down, if I don't lock in my core, if I don't lock in my opposite glute, the one that's not on the ground, I feel like my whole mechanism starts to come almost like a teeter-totter motion. Like I can feel myself creating instability the moment I lock it all in. I'm still better off than I do with both feet on the ground. Like, I love that. Grip, core, latch, hips, everything in unison. And I feel like there's not a lot of times in life where you're in a perfect physical position. You might be in some precarious situation, 1 foot off the ground, like, will generate force now. If you can't tie them all in, you're not going to be able to. So that's just a really good opportunity to build it in from really the ground up. I love it.
Next, we're going to a vertical pulling pattern. What's better than a pull-up? Getting our arms overhead. We got that slight distraction, challenging our scaps, challenging our grip. Great solid movement when it comes to a body weight movement. If you don't have access to a pull-up bar, you can do some sort of vertical pulling mechanism, whatever you feel comfortable with where you're at. Get 8 reps of these. Nice and smooth, good reach, letting those scaps move, really challenging the lats, challenging the grip, squeezing our glutes as we get up overhead. I like eyes right above the bar. I feel like that's a safe place to put our lats, really keep that tension on it rather than going up too high, and now we have a lot of stress on the shoulders just hanging out above the bar. So for this next pair, we're going to combine a rotational movement and an upper back movement. I really like this double arm rotation here, using a cable setup. If you don't have access to a cable, you can use a band. but he's loading his hips, connecting the dots. If you watch his feet, his left foot is pivoting in, his right foot is pivoting, and he's driving that hip through, finishing with both arms. He's thinking about trying to take this position from a 3 o'clock position, if he's set up that way, and taking it all the way across the 9 o'clock in a straight line. Driving it through, loading, driving it through. Let's get 2 more. Loading, drive it through.
Next, we got TRX face pull. We do these because Vernon won't let me do shrugs. Too much risk of injury, but everybody likes big traps, rear delts. Really, for me, so many shoulder issues, I really try to work a lot on rear delts for shoulder stability on the backside. And this is just really a safe way to do it. Everybody can train them, and if not, we can add in a cable and get them in too. But for us, it's the safest way to train traps and the upper back without risk of injury.
As DJ's setting up here with this TRX position, you just notice he's got this overhand position. He's going to pull back, kind of get to that face pull, but then add some external rotation. Like DJ said, we don't really put much emphasis on vertical shrugs. We kind of look at this as a perspective of like a horizontal shrug. He's pulling back, getting that movement of his scaps, getting that protraction and retraction of that movement, challenging that movement, really staying stable, driving his glutes, staying square to the ground, eyes up on the top of the TRX. If you don't have access to a TRX, you can kind of use rings, whatever it may be, or maybe standing upright with a band, getting that face pull with that slight external rotation. Just a sneaky way for us to combine aspects of the shoulder, aspects of the upper trap, aspects of that rotator cuff. So for our capacity work, what we have programmed is an incline walk on a treadmill. We don't have a treadmill here yet, so we're going to go with a slow sled walk. A lot of people ask sometimes, like, when it comes to the equipment that we need, the exercise prescribed, what if I don't have that? Well, we're just going to work around. So a treadmill walk, we're thinking nice and slow incline, challenging but not too arduous. Same thing with the sled. This isn't loaded up too heavy, but it's something that we can slowly push with that slow shred, really challenge that capacity of the aerobic system, but gives us a nice touch on strength. Get it, DJ? Hope you guys enjoyed training with us today. Give these movements a try. Go with the sets and reps as you've seen on the screen. But if you need more help than this, definitely check out the GBRS Performance Program. It has a free 7-day trial. And tomorrow we got press day. You don't want to miss that.